Wrestling fans, if you like what you've seen, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also don't forget to ring that bell.
Do you miss the golden era of professional wrestling? Wrestling fans, it's time to bring those memories back to life. To take you back to the legendary arenas, the chair shots, the foreign objects, good versus evil, all the heroes you loved, and the villains you love to hate, and the blood. Guiding us on this journey through professional wrestling history, IBW Hall of Famers Supermouth Dave Drayson and Terry Sullivan. International Big Time Wrestling and RoX-TV proudly presents Big Time Memories.
Hello everyone, I'm Terry Sullivan along with Dave Drayson, and this is another edition of Big Time Memories. Thank you for all of your feedback. We appreciate all the comments and suggestions, and today's show is the result of some of those suggestions.
Yeah, people are really loving our, random stories or dressing room confidential, stuff that's never been told before.
No particular individual wrestler is the theme, just random stories.
Yeah, stuff that, we experienced and, going to tell you people for the first time, really.
Yeah. And just recently, and I'm so glad you're going to tell this story today, you published a story on slamwrestling.com, probably the most authoritative and believable source for wrestling information, in my opinion. But you published a story on there that you're going to relate to us today.
Yeah, I did a story for Greg Oliver's group, Slam. And this has been a story I've been wanting to tell for many years, and I've never really said, anywhere, about this. And it's something I experienced when I was 12 years old. I was a wrestling fan, attending shows at Cobo Arena and, getting to know the fans. And, this particular day started at Cobo Arena. That would have been July 22nd, 1967. Like I said, I was 12 years old and couldn't wait to see this card, because in the main event was the Sheik versus Bobo Brazil. And everybody, this has been an anticipated, matchup for many years, since, 1965 when the Sheik bought the promotion. And other guys on the card were like Lord Layton, Gary Hart was there, Fred Curry, Bill and Dan Miller, Mark Lewin, Bobby Shane, and Mighty Igor. So anyway, great show, from top to bottom. And then the Sheik and Bobo match starts. And this was no 5-minute, match at that time. They really went at it. So I remember right about the 25-minute mark, I'd say, give or take a minute or two, the Sheik and Bobo were going at it, and Bobo cocoa-butted Sheik out of the ring. And then the Sheik, had done so many dastardly things. And from my front row seat, and I was sitting next to Dawn Porter, Cleo Lane, who became Al Costello's wife, and seated next to them were the Reverend and Mrs. Cessna.
Yep. Every week, every show.
And the Reverend Cessna, he's, he hated the Sheik.
He was a raggy old codger.
He hated the Sheik. And the Sheik, got cocoa-butted out of the ring and came toward us, and right by Mr. Cessna. I don't know what, became of him, but he jumped out of his seat and he went after the Sheik. And the Sheik, he's seen him sitting there for years and years and years. He knew he was a regular. He sort of backed off, and security came, and basically, usually somebody interferes like that, they're going to get, tossed. They calmed Reverend Cessna down, and so did Mrs. Cessna, sat him back on his seat, and about, proceeded.
Yeah, he'd get all wrapped up in the action, man.
Yeah, and, then what ended up happening, Sheik got disqualified.
No.
So he retained the title, and the belt was still around the Sheik's waist, and everybody left disappointed. So the very following day, July 23rd, 1967, a big, a memorable day in the city of Detroit, and I'll say why. The day started out, I left my home on the east side of Detroit, took my bus downtown. Downtown, I walked to the, tunnel to go over to Canada, and walked from the tunnel to CKLW Channel 9 Studios, where, the promotion filmed 2, shows, for and to promote the upcoming, matches. So usually we're the first ones to find out what the card's going to be,
right,
instead of having to wait till Thursday night, at 8 o'clock when the show would air.
Yeah.
So we already knew what the bouts were going to be, and that happened to be a rematch between Chic and Bobo Brazil. So it's like, we sat through, 2 tapings, 1-hour tapings, and, we had fun watching the squash matches and seeing our favorites and cheering and jeering and stuff like that. So anyway, the show's over. Everybody's let out of the studio, and most people are going to their cars in the parking lot, and, I didn't drive at the time. I'm only 12 years old. So I come out of the studio, and I go out onto Riverside Drive to walk back to the tunnel. And I look over into, out into the city of Detroit, because it's, the studio is like right opposite, almost Cobo Arena. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking, and off on the west, I see smoke, smoke billowing in number of different places. And it's like, wow, there's one heck of a fire going on somewhere. And it's like, so, I didn't think nothing about it. So I walked back to the tunnel, got on my bus, paid my 25 cents to take me back across the border, and went through customs, and, started my walk back. I had like a half-a-mile walk to get back to my Van Dyke bus. So I'm walking, and this is about 3:30 in the afternoon. And I sort of noticed that, wow, it's really quiet downtown Detroit on a Sunday afternoon. There's hardly anybody downtown. And it's like, yeah, okay, no big deal. So I'm getting close to my bus stop, and I come across a bunch of kids, maybe a little bit older than me, walking, a few different groups. And it's like, and I hear them talking. And they said that they were at the Fox Theater for a Motown review. They had a bunch of Motown acts that would, perform. And I heard this one kid say that Martha Reeves came on the microphone, almost just after the show started, and said, quietly, please leave the theater and go directly home. And I was like, wow, that's weird, And, as a 12-year-old kid, you don't think of stuff like that. So anyway, I get on my bus, and I'm going home. So my bus route, I happen to notice that, wow, it's really weird. There's no cars on the road either. One here or there, but not the usual traffic that I'm used to. So I get off my bus, I walk my, 2 blocks home, and, walk into the house, and my parents, they're like, oh, God, thank God you're safe. It's like, yeah, it's like, what I usually do. And they're glued to the TV, the black and white TV, of course. And they're watching, and there's all this chaos going on with police and, fires, and, I didn't know what was going on. And my parents said, yeah, there's a riot going on in downtown Detroit. And I go, I didn't understand what a riot was, a 12-year-old kid. So anyway, that's what was going on. And come to find out, the night before, I guess the heat that was at Cobo, with the Chic and Bobo, must have, taken over the streets, because on 12th and Claremont, the police raided what was called a blind pig, an illegal drink and gambling place. And they arrested 82 people. Wow. And what ended up happening, there was racial tension across the country at that time, right. And there was riots in other cities, and it just spilled out into Detroit at that time, which, caused the Detroit riots. And being home, with my parents that day, I remember, it was about 6 o'clock at night, and I get a call from my grandmother, who lived 2 doors down from my father's store. My father had a, butcher shop, meat market, just a neighborhood, store. And they said, yeah, they broke into the store and, they're stealing everything. Which, that was typical looting and, the fires that were burning throughout the city and stuff, that, what was going on. But when my father finally went there a few days later, the place was ransacked, everything was gone. But he said he went under the register and the weekend's receipts were still there in a brown paper bag. Wow. They didn't steal the money. They stole everything else but the money. So anyway, I remember my neighborhood, there's, the guards and police and tanks and, troops just everywhere, just patrolling the streets. And as a kid, oh, well, that's really cool. It's like, playing, G.I. Joe or something like that. I just didn't, know the ramifications of what really was going on. And then it came, it sort of died down over a week. There was a bunch of arrests and buildings burnt and people who were died and, things started to calm down. And I waited, that 2-week period because the Cobo show was coming again, and that would have been August 5th, 1967. And it was the rematch of Sheik and Bobo Brazil. And other guys on that show like Chief White Owl and Dr. Jerry Graham and Bulldog Brower, Billy Red Lyons, Ricky Cortez, all the greats were on that show. But the main event, Sheik versus Bobo. And what ended up happening, and before I get to that, I'll say this. I talked to the Sheik many years later about this incident, and he relayed to me his thinking of, how the ending happened. And that's why I say that to this day, from the 1967 riots, I believe that the Sheik helped heal the city of Detroit. Because that night, it wasn't planned for him to lose the belt, but he figured what better way to help heal the city than to lose the title to a person of color, being Bobo Brazil. And Bobo Brazil did defeat the Sheik, for the title. And the thing about that was, during this racial tension and stuff, all of us, came into Cobo, whites, blacks, Mexicans, just everybody from all different walks of life. And it was all about wrestling. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about racial things at all. Right. And we came there at Cobo as one. And when Bobo Brazil won that title, and the boys came out of the dressing room and raised him on his shoulders and paraded him around the ring. And the fans went, nuts. Cobo, I never heard an echo of, cheers and, jubilation ever before that big. And all because, Bobo won the title, all us fans, black, white, and, whatever, high-fiving, shaking hands, hugging and everything. And to this day, I say, from the 67 riots, the Sheik helped heal the city of Detroit.
Wow. That's a great story, very profound. Because Bobo had been chasing the Sheik for years.
Exactly.
So this thing had been building forever. The Sheik was always a great proponent of racial equality, and he would kid, being Arabic, that he said, well, I'm just a black man. And he said that not entirely joking. He was pretty much serious. He believed he was a black man.
Mm-hmm. So that's one story, and I thank Greg Oliver and Slam Wrestling for getting that out worldwide to fans, and I've got great response about it. And now you fans on Big Time Memories get to hear that story.
I bet you have gotten a good response. That's a great story.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Sheik. I remember we did a segment a while ago, and you talked about your first time appearing at Cobo Arena.
Right.
And you said something about your first time meeting the Sheik.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, of course, the Sheik was one of these guys from the time I was a little kid that I was always so afraid of, and like a lot of people would always run away from him. As I was into my teenage years going to the matches in Toledo, I still avoided him. I never talked to him, but he would always watch almost all of the matches. I really didn't know that these were all his employees that he was watching and probably evaluating. But he would come across from the bad guy's dressing room in Toledo. There was a set of steps that went up into the seats. And he would stand there in the stairway and just stand there and watch the matches. And I'm, of course, running around annoying people and like wrestlers' wives and things like that. And I'd have to walk by him every now and then, and he'd glare at me, but, you know, never like tried to cut my head off or anything like that. So I had never met him, and once when I started, it was because of Les Ruffin in Cincinnati. I went to college there, and Les was the promoter in Cincinnati and Dayton, and had a big hand in getting a lot of young people their start in the wrestling business, like you,
mine
and
too.
me, and many, many, many others. And Les liked me, thankfully. And after a while, he said, "Why don't you come to Dayton and ring announce?" Wow. Okay. So that was set in stone. And then he's working on getting me a license to announce in Cincinnati, because they had this little Mickey Mouse commission, wrestling commission in Cincinnati. You had to pay $2 to be a ring announcer for the Cincinnati Boxing and Wrestling Commission. And so I got to Dayton and started announcing in Dayton every Monday or every other Monday whenever they ran. But the Sheik hadn't come to Dayton yet. He didn't always go to the smaller towns, the smaller cities. He was at Cobo every show pretty much, but not so much the other towns. He'd be there once every 3 or 4 months, come in, and that'd be about it. So I went several weeks and never came across him in Dayton. During that time, Mike Lauren, Porky the Pig, who was in charge of running some of the towns, he asked me if I would consider going from Cincinnati to Mansfield and Sandusky, which ran once a month on alternate Friday nights. I said, sure, I'll drive all the way from Cincinnati to Mansfield and Sandusky. Why wouldn't I? Heck yeah, for almost no money. But I did it, and I was glad to do it. And then I started, was about to start in Cincinnati, hadn't yet. And the Sheik came to Dayton one night and watched me announce. And apparently he must have liked what he saw, because several days later he was in Cincinnati, and after the show was over, Les Ruffin said, "Go on out to the car, the Sheik wants to talk to you." What?
Oh, what did I do wrong?
Got to change your underwear? What? Going to talk to the Sheik? Oh my God. So out I went. He was in the purple Lincoln. The purple Lincoln with the white top and the white upholstery. And Jesse Ortega, who was working in the office at that time, was the driver that night. And I walked up to the window, and the Sheik was really waiting for me. And he said, "So you want to announce for me, huh?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "All right, I'll tell you what. Come to Cobo Arena in 2 weeks, buy yourself a black suit, and we're going to do TV the next day. You do Cobo Arena that night, and we do TV at channel 20 or 62, whatever it was, the next day." And I said, "Okay." And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. And he says, "And don't tell anybody you ever talk to me. If you do, I'll cut your tongue out."
Yeah.
Okay. And I believed he would.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, great story.
Yeah.
You know, man, you know, Les Ruffin, you know, you mentioned him, you know, God bless his soul. He was such a nice man.
Yeah.
Helped you, gave me my first opportunity in the territory here to shoot up at the ring in Cincinnati, and you know, that led to Dayton and then Toledo, and then finally I got my chance at Cobo Arena, and you know, from there taking pictures. Then I started, you know, writing the body press, and you know, my career was taking off as a young kid, and you know, we got to work together so many times.
Yeah, right.
You know, and speaking of one time we got to work together, this would have been 1974, late 73 into 74. The Sheik knew that I wanted to become a manager. You know, I was too small, skinny. I only weighed like 142 pounds at the time. You know, I couldn't be a wrestler, and I had no aspirations of being a wrestler at all. But I wanted to be a manager. I wanted to be like Abdullah Farouk. I wanted to be like Bobby Heenan.
Sure.
I wanted to be like George Cannon. I wanted to be one of those guys, and he knew it. You know, we talked,
yeah.
you know, numerous times when we were together, you know, away from, you know, the matches and stuff. So he knew I wanted to do this. So it was a time that the first time was at the office at Bigtime Wrestling Studios in Williamston. And he says, okay, come on. I'm going to put you up there. This was after all the other guys and cities, the promos were done. And he says, yeah, okay, you get up there. Give me 2 minutes. And I think the very first guy I was with was Killer Brooks. And he says, do 2 minutes. And, you know, Brooks, you know, great guy on promo, you know, I was hoping that he's going to, you know, help me, you know, jump in somewhere. And it's no, they gave me the whole 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that 2 minutes, people think it's easy to cut a 2-minute promo.
No.
Well, it's not. You know, you have to really think and improvise and ad-lib. That's what you do. You know, it's not like you got writers. Not back in that day. We didn't have writers.
No.
You know, you wrote yourself and put yourself over. So that was my first foray. And then every time we would shoot, you know, promos, you know, if I was there, Sheik would have me at the end of the show, and he'd film it. And then we'd go into the TV truck, and, you know, we'd watch it, and then he'd analyze. He'd tell me what I did right, tell me what I did wrong. So he was grooming me in that respect. And then there was a time when they built the studio across the street. You know, we had the mobile TV truck there.
Yeah.
That, you know,
It's
same
like a
thing.
warehouse.
Yeah, that we would be cutting promos there. And the one time, you know, I was going to do something different. You know, what can I do to, you know, to make the Sheik notice what I'm doing? Not just, you know, talking in a, you know, promo just with, you know, some other clothes on. I came out in Kiss makeup. you know,
got
something
the
that he's never seen before.
We have photographic evidence.
Yeah, and you were there, but they put me with Bob Finnegan. But they didn't have another wrestler there to have me with. So he says, okay, you're managing Hank James, 2 minutes. And I'm in this Kiss makeup, and I also brought a mannequin head that I had painted, you know, eyes and mouth and nose and everything else on. And I did this promo, like a dark promo, you know, with this head and stuff like that. And it's like, what was it, 15, 20 years later? I'm saying, hey, somebody stole my gimmick here.
No kidding. Al Snow?
Al Snow. My good friend Al Snow managed him, you know, with Mickey
That's right,
Doyle.
you did,
Yeah, you know, great talent when he was young. You know, nice, respectful kid, well-spoken. I just had fun managing him. You know, but when he went to WWF at the time, next thing I know, here he is with a mannequin head.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever saw, because I never used the mannequin head ever again.
You never told him the story?
Well, years later I did,
Yeah,
you know, that, hey, you know, I did this thing like 15, 20 years ago. Look, I got pictures, you know, what you people see. So that's, you know, that was my first foray with the head, first head I ever got, and I guess the first head that Al Snow used too. So that's my story with, you know, the head.
That's your story, and you're stuck with it. The next thing I want to get into is an absolutely fascinating topic to me, and a lot of people out there are into championship titles, championship belts, as they call them. Although the Sheik would say, don't call it a belt. It's a championship. It's a title. Yep. Okay. And the history of championship belts in big-time wrestling in Detroit, the United States Championship and the Tag Team Championships.
Well, let me start with the singles championship belt. There was 4 different versions. Very first and foremost, when the Sheik beat Johnny Valentine for the title in 1965, there's the original belt, which, you know, we'll have pictures showing the fans here. And Sheik held that for a number of years, and that was the title belt. And then when Bobo Brazil finally beat the Sheik for the title, they took the belt and they added studs to it. They put these, black studs all around the belt. So they just modified the original belt.
Yeah.
So Bobo wore that, and I think I have a photograph of Pampero Firpo in that,
the
title belt.
Because he beat Bobo for the title back then.
Then a few years went by, and a good friend of mine, wrestler, who wrestled here very briefly, but his name was Nikita Molkovic, and he was a belt maker.
From Toronto.
Right. And he did the next version number 3 of the title belt. And it was, sort of ovalish, and it had a eagle in the center, and it had, side plates on it. And
It looked like the Carolinas, looked like Vince McMahon's in New York City, because he did them all.
Yeah, so many guys wore almost the same belt.
Yeah,
so if
and
you saw,
you didn't know it that back then.
Yeah, so when you'd see photographs in, the magazines, it's the same belt. Well, the Sheik held that belt, the Backlund held that belt, Superstar Billy Graham held,
No, not that U.S. title, the U.S. title in the Carolinas.
Yeah, and then the final version, it's the last one that the Sheik used even after the promotion folded, and he, traveled the country and, did spot shows here and there, and, went down to, Tennessee and Georgia and, Florida, but he wore the red leather belt with like the gold United States emblem in the center.
Yeah.
So that would have been the final, belt that, in big time wrestling.
Yeah, and the whereabouts, who knows?
No.
There are different stories out there, and I told you a version that I heard that I would have sworn to you was absolutely true, because the Sheik's son, Eddie Jr., told me face to face that they buried the Sheik with that belt. They put it into the casket with him before they closed the casket. But not true.
Not true. I had heard that a collector in Japan had it. And then you relayed to me that, they put the belt, in with the Sheik's body, when they were going to bury him. But I was at the funeral. Here's how I can refute Eddie Jr.'s story. I was at the funeral home that day, and I was standing there when they closed that casket. When, they closed the casket, locked it, we went to the church, did the ceremony there, went to the cemetery, buried in the ground. So in between that time when the funeral home locked that, casket, it's never going to be open again.
Right.
And I know that nobody there shoved the championship belt in with the Sheik.
That's interesting.
So that's how I can refute that.
Yeah. And then Sabu has a bit of a different take on things, because the story he tells is that it was damaged either in Japan, or somebody in Japan was supposed to fix it and it got lost or whatever, and who knows. So it's a huge mystery.
Yeah. Well, any of the big time wrestling belts, don't know if they exist or whose hands that they're in, what collector has them.
Yeah.
And the same thing for, the tag team belts. Those were unique also.
Mm-hmm.
And I can probably relate to 4 different versions of those belts. First and foremost, I can remember the Hells Angels wearing the square belts, which were owned by Dick the Bruiser.
Well, weren't they Paul's?
No. Well, they could have been.
I think he supplied the belts. Chris Colt, Paul Dupree.
Yeah.
I think they were his belts. They eventually ended up as Bruiser's tag team championship belts.
Right.
And those are the ones we used for Bruiser Bedlam.
Right. And I think my good friend in the Indianapolis area, Chris Parsons, owned those now.
He does, yeah. Right.
So those I remember were the first version.
Yeah.
The second version was the round ones. It was like a oval, round, belt, with, the
Like
United States.
Stomper and Justice, right?
Right. Stomper and Justice wore those belts. And then years later, and because, they really didn't have tag team championship, belts for a while, or any championships. Mm-hmm. And then they resurrected the titles again, and it was almost a replica of the Sheik's third belt with the, made by Nikita Molkovic, with the eagle in the center and gold piece and plates on the
Right,
side.
yeah.
So the Sheik's, United States Championship and the Tag Team Championships belts looked almost the same, or basically the same. And then the last version I remember is Al Costello had a red and black version that he supplied for the Kangaroos. And I think Justice and Stomper wore them maybe once. And then, it went back to the Kangaroos, and, even when I managed the Kangaroos, Al Costello and Mickey Doyle, those were the belts that Al Costello used, the Kangaroos used.
Gotcha.
So, and then the one trivia piece on that, on the tag team belts, I think,
I know
because
right
I
where
have
you're going with this too.
I have photograph proof that I believe that Ben Justice is the only wrestler to have worn all 4 versions of the heavyweight tag team championship.
And if it's not the Kangaroos, then it's got to be Ben, because with Rocky Johnson, with
Rocky
Stomper,
Johnson,
and then with Brooks.
Killer Brooks.
Yeah, wow. So many times things come to me as we sit here. Do you know there was another title in big time wrestling toward the end?
What's
the
that?
WWS title.
Worldwide Sports title?
The Worldwide Sports. Worldwide Sports was the company name for big time wrestling. The WWS title was worn by Captain Ed George.
No. I'm sure Captain Ed bought it, at some novelty store or something
what it
like
was it was one of the old tag team belts.
Really?
Yeah, and it was one of the ones that they had retired, and who knows, again, where it was or where it is, but that's the belt that he wore when he was a champion for.
I want to see a picture of that.
Okay, we'll do it.
I don't have one, so you're going to have to come up with that.
Yep.
Okay, but on the original singles title, the United States Heavyweight Championship, let me, post this one for you.
Okay.
Try to tell me all the people that held the title.
Held the U.S. title?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. Let me borrow your pen there so I can mark these off.
You already stole
Go
one
ahead.
of my pens.
No, that's okay. I'll return it in some years. Okay. Start. Who wore the United States Heavyweight Championship belt?
Oh, we're going to count Johnny Valentine?
Yes, we will.
We're going to start with him.
Okay.
Sheik,
Yes.
Bobo,
Yes.
Furpo,
Yes, sir.
Igor,
Ding, ding.
Kent,
Bulldog Don Kent. Yes.
Abdullah the Butcher,
Yes.
Tony Marino.
Yes.
See, Tex
He's on a
never-
roll. He's on a roll.
How many do I have yet to get?
You've got to get 1, 2, 3, 4 more.
Oh my God! Seriously?
Yep.
Who the hell else was there?
Here, let me give you a hint.
Yeah. Ox Baker.
Ox Baker?
Ox Baker. Okay. All right. Does Stasiak hold it?
No.
No.
Never held it.
Oh my God! Tex never held it.
No.
Furpo, Bull Curry never held it. Igor we already talked about. Justice never had it. Stomper never had it. Kangaroos. Okay, I'm gonna give up.
No, I can't let you give up. I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
Channel 62. First time in Gino Hernandez. Bing, bing.
Okay. And there's one more?
No, 2 more.
2 more. I'm never gonna get this.
Yes, you will.
I will not.
Yes, because one of the guys who held it was known as the Israeli champion.
Oh, Mark Lewin.
Mark Lewin.
And the guy who won it from Mark Lewin was Terry Funk.
There you go. Ding, ding. He's got them all. Good job,
A little help. But you had to write them down.
I did. I did my research.
Yes, you did.
But now, another question that came in, for us on, RoX-TV, one of the comments, this fan wondered what great talents in the world of professional wrestling never worked for the Sheik
Oh, yeah.
and Big Time Wrestling.
So big, huge names that never worked for the Sheik.
And there ain't many.
No, there's not. Vern Gagne, because they didn't get along at all. Well, Snyder never worked for him. I mean, Snyder worked Detroit, but not. Oh, yes, he did, though. He came in after Bruiser and Sheik settled their differences.
78, 79.
Yeah, so Snyder came in. Mad Dog Vachon.
Yes.
Nick Bockwinkel.
Right.
Was in the early 60s at the start of his career, but never came back from the Sheik. Ivan Koloff. Now, Koloff wrestled there.
Yep.
Superstar Billy Graham. Bruno wrestled in Detroit. Bill Watts.
No, never worked here.
Eddie Graham.
Yes, he did. Eddie Graham came in on one of the very first NWA sending the wave of guys.
Oh, the Super Show.
Yeah,
Right
with
when the
Mel
opposition
Mascaras, Pat O'Connor,
Okay.
Gorilla Monsoon.
Well, Kerry Von Erich never appeared here. Kevin did, but Kerry was, I don't think had started yet at that point by 80. Oh, gosh. Give me some names. Who do you think?
Well, even though he worked here in the early 60s with his brother as a tag team, the first tag team champions, in the territory, pre-Big Time Wrestling days. But John Tolos never came back and worked for Big Time Wrestling.
That's another question that we get a lot, because the Sheik and John Tolos had this huge money-drawing feud in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And everybody sort of expected it to come to Detroit, but it never did. Same thing with Freddy Blassie.
Yeah.
They had huge matches in L.A., and Blassie came to Detroit every 3 or 4 months, came in. And in fact, Mickey Doyle had his first match with Freddy Blassie on
TV.
television. Yeah.
Yeah.
But why do you think that the Blassie and Tolos never wrestled the Sheik in Detroit?
My first thought would be money. Maybe the Sheik didn't want to pay for trans on a plane ticket from L.A. because that's where Tolos and Blassie were based. They knew the payoffs. Through rumors. They thought the payoffs were bad, so maybe they wouldn't want to come back here to do those kind of shots. And also Blassie and Tolos, you got to figure in L.A. Before Blassie was like one of the good guys there. Blassie was like one of the biggest hated heels in the world of professional wrestling. So was John Tolos out there.
Yeah.
I mean, drew big money. Maybe bringing those two guys in, he didn't want to relinquish himself as the top heel. He didn't want Blassie or Tolos to steal any of his thunder.
Yeah.
But if, Blassie or Tolos went against the Sheik at Cobo Arena, they would really have had to promote them, first. You just, because there was times I know that, like the first time they brought Dory Funk Jr. in, the NWA champion. I'll say 90 to 95% of the fans of Cobo had no idea who he was.
That's right, because he'd never been shown on TV.
Not unless you were, one of the readers of any of the national magazines.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Great. Dory Funk Jr. is coming in. But when he come in, going against either the Sheik or he went against Ernie Ladd and Pompero Firpo, the fans just, okay, just another guy. And wait, what's he doing? He's in the main event here.
The same thing with Harley Race. When
Exactly.
Harley came in, they didn't know who he was.
Exactly.
He was one of the best in the world.
Terry Funk.
Yeah.
They knew Dory. He was here, a number of times defending the belt. But,
Yeah.
when Terry came in, not unless you were a hardcore fan did you know any of these guys.
The only thing I ever wondered about was because, we talk about Detroit, but it was a lot more than Detroit. It was all Michigan and all Ohio, and Tolos or Blassie, neither one of them were going to come and work the circuit.
Right.
They were going to come in for Cobo, and that was it. They're back home to the money land, the salad land.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was a factor or not.
Well, we'll never know,
Yeah.
will we?
But there's not that many superstars who didn't at least make one appearance in Detroit.
Yeah, even
Gorilla
in the dying
Monsoon
days,
yeah.
The great, like Peter Maivia and, Mil Mascaras came in and, so many others,
Yeah.
But, you could be the biggest name in wrestling and still not be able to draw money and bring the house up and,
That's right.
That's the sign of the times.
Yeah, that is it.
And another sign of the times as we end this episode.
We're out of time.
Yeah, but as we customarily do, Terry, we end with you doing a ring announcement on one of the guys.
Hopefully somebody I know.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to do what you did to me some time ago. I'm not going to give you, some jabroni. But anyway, how about you doing, like who we just talked about, how about you doing an outro and a ring induction for the great Freddy Blassie?
Oh, Freddy Blassie. Where was I? I must have introduced him.
Hollywood, California.
Okay. Isn't that something, though? I can't remember, but he was definitely on cards that I announced.
Yeah.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, from Hollywood, California, weighing 240 pounds, the fashion plate, Freddy Blassie. Classy Freddy Blassie.
I'm really proud to say that I'm a part of IBW.
I take pride in IBW that we are a family-run company.
It's a fight. It's a sport. At IBW, tradition has always mattered.
You're going to see world-class professional big-time wrestling at its best.
This ain't no sports entertainment. This is professional wrestling.
International Big Time Wrestling's The Fix. Each and every week, your fix of IBW action. You want entertainment? Look no further than RoX-TV. International Big Time Wrestling!
Wrestling fans, if you like what you've seen, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also don't forget to ring that bell.